We look to scale in on pound longs London session since we have news or waiting for 8:30 USD news. I don't like trading 8 a.m. news on pound, 8 a.m. European time, so 2 a.m. New York time. I usually skip them. So no, I probably won't scale into it, just let my trade run. And then maybe in late London session or New York session, depending what the news are doing, look to for more longs. The reason why, simply because it's the first session of the day and straight at the session open, so you got no price action really of the day, which you could use to trade narrative for the rest of the day. Do you always avoid? Not always, but most of the times. It always depends on the context. So sometimes I might trade it, sometimes I don't, but mostly I don't trade it at all. That's again something you guys should journal. You know, what news at what time, what is your win rate on what news. Those are all things you should journal. If you don't know your win rate on 2 a.m. news compared to 8:30 news, you guys missing out on valuable information. That's why journaling is so important. Like I know for all news events, I know what win rate I have on what news events. Unemployment claims, retail sales, PPI, everything. What is the best performing for you? Unemployment claims. And the worst, the 2 a.m. news. Mm. Since we're talking about major red folder news, can you share light on the ones that are two faces and the ones that are one face movement? So first of all, not all news you can say that's one a two face all the time. That's one a one face. It always depends on the context, right? What has price done before? Where are we traded higher time frames? What's the narrative? What's the bias? What has the previous session done? What have we done pre-news? Um, but as a rule of thumb, usually CPI tends to be one-sided, while NFP and FOMC are more often than not two-sided events. And then regarding all the other red folders, that's always depending on what we have done pre-news and where we are trading. For example, have we seen any major manipulation ahead of news? Then the chance to see distribution on news is quite high. If we have not seen any major manipulation ahead of news, then most red folders will have or will be manipulation initially and then distribution. That's the main things you want to look out for. Would you trust the Geo trade so much today? My setup. I trust my setup, right? The only thing which was not ideal was DXY still lacked some displacement on the hourly. That was the only thing which concerned me a bit. But since the setup was A plus, like just looking at Geo itself, it was definitely for me worth taking the risk. Also, the overall EV of that trade was really high. Usually, if you have high EV trades, I always take them. So yeah. I feel like the bank holiday today had better PA than normal days currently. Yeah, that's also a funny thing, most people don't get at all how to trade bank holidays or when to avoid bank holidays. Like, every time you trade bank holidays as an ICT trader and you post about it on socials, people come, oh, you trade bank holidays, how dare you? Like, just because you don't know when to trade bank holidays and how to handle them doesn't mean you can't trade them, right? Your own limitations are not limitations for someone else. So again, it all depends on the context. That's like how you can describe trading in one sentence. You can't say it's bank holiday, you can't trade. That's nonsense. You obviously got to keep bank holiday in mind, but you always have to keep in mind the overall context. Like, what countries do you have bank holiday? What have the previous daily candles done? Where are you trading on higher time frames? How does the rest of the economic calendar of the week look like? All of those things come into play. That's why, having experience, um, and that's why I always say, the edge is not on the lower time frames. The edge you should build is on the higher time frames, on the daily, the hourly, how you frame a narrative, how you create a bias, when to expect expansions, and that's what comes with experience. And that's something you can only teach so far. I mean, that's if you this week I've pretty much nailed the entire week. I nailed each daily move. I nailed each daily bias correct. Almost all key levels got respected the way I want them to get respected. Like, that doesn't come from just watching ICT or refining entry models. That comes from back testing and live testing the higher time frames, having experience, watching the charts each day, each week, always reviewing what price has done, collecting data. For example, I didn't wake up one day and knew that Thursday oftentimes reverses the FOMC move on Wednesday. It's not something I just made up out of thin air. Or same with the Monday range play, when I tell you guys if we get a daily closure in the Monday range, that's a high probability Monday range framework. Same as if we close below. Those small things, like if I tell you guys on Euro the shorts here, Monday range low resistance, those small things. The average trader doesn't know those things, and that's my edge. My edge, literally, I know how to read the higher time frames as good as almost no one. And I don't say that with ego, it's just the way it is. If you go out there on socials and you compare my consistency on the higher time frames in Forex compared to other people, you will have a hard time finding someone else with the same consistency. And that comes because I spend thousands of hours on the charts. And that's also where I love trading so much. I always get better. Each year I get better because I watch the charts. I get a feedback of price. My muscle memory is always developing. I always review each week, each day. I take notes mentally or take notes physically in my notebook. And then, over time, you just refine, refine, refine. And you see what works, you see what doesn't work, and that's it. And if you have, this framework, for example, you have the Monday range, how prices trading around the Monday range, you have the economic calendar, roughly what news, how they behave, how they impact price in the following days. If you have all of those small puzzle pieces, you can put together one big picture. Then you have to always compare, okay, what is favoring this scenario, what is favoring the opposite scenario. And then you compare both sides, what makes more sense. And then all you do is find your lower time frame model. I have the one shot one kill model, I have my day trading model, I have my session profile model, and then you just apply one of those within the context. Did you find progress on that was rather slow when you weren't able to trade full time? Like, I've always been able to trade full time. So when I was going to uni, I was trading full time. When I was working at my internship, I was trading full time. When I'm on vacation, I trade full time unless the time zone is not allowing me to do it, like in Mexico, for example. So I'm always trading full time. It's something I enjoy doing. So if I'm on vacation and I can't trade, I don't enjoy the vacation as much as if I could trade. I entered it in the description of you posted on X. I invented change in order flow. I'm pretty sure I've never said I invented change in order flow. The wording I invented, yes. The abbreviation, that's what I invented, if you want to call it like that. But order flow is nothing you can invent. Same like CRT, a candle range. There's nothing you can invent. It's just there. A candle has a high and a low, so it's a range. So and price trades above and below the range highs. So it's nothing you can invent. What's your routine when you trade? All right, I'll give you once and for all a breakdown of my routine. Okay. Uh, So my routine always starts on Sunday, right? So Sunday I do my weekly analysis, my weekly outlook, which is the weekly outlook stream. I set my bias for the week. What do I think is going to happen next week on the weekly candle? When do we have what news do we have during the week? What pairs do I want to trade or want to focus on? And then I decide, okay, which days and which sessions look according to the economic calendar and the way we are trading the most high probability. And those are the sessions and the day I then know, okay, that those are the days where I want to mainly focus my trades around. That's always what I do on Sunday, right? Then Sunday we get the weekly open, right? And I wait for the weekly open to pass. What is Asia doing on Monday? And then we get into Monday, New York London session open. I usually, as mentioned, I don't trade Mondays unless it's an NFP week or we have the previous weekly Thursday and Friday not seeing an expansion, and Friday or Thursday do set up Monday to see expansion, right? Like we have seen, for example, this week's Monday. I think it was this week. Yeah, this week's Monday. Those are the two conditions when I do trade Mondays. And then I also prefer to let Mondays London session play out. And then usually if I trade Mondays, it's mostly around New York session. Again, this doesn't mean I will never trade Mondays London session. It just means most of the times it will be then the Mondays New York session. Then Monday daily candle closure, I wait for daily candle closure, and then again, on Monday evening, my preparation starts for Tuesday. So I wait for the Monday daily closure at 11 p.m. my time zone, and then I adapt my bias. So I take a look, okay, what has Monday done? How do we close the Monday daily candle? Is it confirming my weekly narrative? So the weekly profile I have in mind, which I created on Sunday. If yes, then I just keep going with that bias or the expectation. If Monday gives me a reason to switch my bias, I switch my bias. And if Monday daily candle closure doesn't give me any bias, so I say, okay, I have no idea what Tuesday, Wednesday might be doing because I can frame both sides, then I just do nothing. I wait until I get a clear bias again. So then let's say I have a bias, next day Tuesday. Again, it always depends when do we have news, what has price been doing, and then I adapt. Okay, do I want to trade the next day, and what sessions would I want to focus on? Like, where do we have news? Have we seen any overextension on Monday, or what's my consolidation profile? And then I just wake up for a session I want to trade. For example, if I want to trade London session, I do wake up for London session and check what is price doing London session open. If I get a trade, I take the trade. If not, I don't take a trade. If I wake up London session open and I see immediately price is not trading anywhere close to the key levels I have defined the evening before, then I close the charts and go to sleep again or do some other stuff. I wait for London session to pass, and then again I check what has London session done. Did it anything to confirm my bias? Did it invalidate my bias? Is there any reason to switch my bias? And then I wait for New York session, and then the same thing again. What is my narrative for New York session? What are my key levels? What are my if-then triggers? And then I simply execute according to my plan, right? London close session as well, if you have news at 10 a.m., for example. And then I repeat that each day. Wait for daily closure, repeat the same stuff. And then on Friday, I am done with my trading week. And then I make sure I have journaled all my trades. And also each day, every time the daily candle is closed or I had any trades, whatever, I compare my outlook to how the market actually played out. So I review my expectations to what happened, right? If my expectations were true, then nice, right? If I see, for example, I had the wrong bias or the wrong narrative, I take a look. Was there anything I have missed, or is there anything I could have done differently to have the correct bias? And that's where I note down, or I simply remind myself to keep in mind going forward. Also, if I've taken any trades, I ask myself, did I execute the way I planned to do? Did I manage my risk? Did I manage the trade as I'm supposed to do? All of those things, basically you kind of like reflect on your own behavior, on your own actions, and you also note those things down which come to your mind which you want to change or which you think you can improve on, and you each day, right? Then the weekend starts again after Friday, and that's where you want to review. Usually on Saturday I review my week. I go over all the trades I've taken. I check, okay, did I take all the trades that my model presented itself? If yes, perfect. Then again, did I stick to my risk management? If there were any missed trades, for example, like last week, post CPI, the long London session, why did I miss the trade? Because I was sleeping, so not really much I can change in hindsight. But for example, if I miss a trade when I'm on the charts and I couldn't spot it live, I asked myself, okay, what was the reason? Why couldn't I spot the trade live? That especially was something back then when I was at my break-even stage, where I was consistent for some time, then sometime not so consistent. Back then, I often had the struggles to not be able to spot my trades playing out in the live markets. So oftentimes, I was having a bias, but I missed my trade, and I only saw my trade in hindsight once it played out. So I was okay. How can I? What was the reason why wasn't I able to take that trade live, but only were able to see the trade in hindsight? I reverse engineered the reason, and next time I try to implement those changes I made. And over time, it was less common that I missed my trades. So nowadays, for example, it barely happens that I miss my setup if I'm on the chart, obviously. Um, I'm not perfect. I also sometimes miss my setup if I'm on the charts, but obviously the frequency of that is much, much lower than it was like 2 or 3 years ago, right? Um, those things I review. Then, as mentioned, Saturday as well, I go over all the trades, check, okay, what setup did I have? Is there anything I can optimize, or just review my trades? And I do that on a weekly basis, but also, as mentioned yesterday in the stream or the day before, I'm not sure anymore. I also do that on a quarterly basis. So each quarter, when I have about 30, 50 trades, some decent sample size, I look at those trades and make like a deep dive into those trades and see, okay, is there anything new which has changed in the last 3 months regarding my system? Can I optimize something? Because the markets always change, right? They always change a bit. The markets, obviously, my system will always work because it's based on liquidity. But small nuances, for example, how is price moving, when is price moving, those things are always changing. That's why also mechanical systems, so systems which are purely mechanical, they only have a certain lifespan. They don't work all the time. They might be profitable for some months, maybe some years even, but at sometime this edge will vanish. And with my system, the edge will never vanish because I'm the edge. My way of reading price, forming daily bias, creating narrative, that edge will never vanish because I always improve. I always adapt to the market. Um, but obviously, you should do that only on a higher time frame, right? Not like on a weekly time frame. You should not adapt your system on a weekly basis. That obviously makes no sense. Then again, Sunday, I told you already what I do on Sunday, and then I repeat that each week, each month, each year. How do you exactly connect news, fundamentals, and TA? What info gives you bias? And when are you looking for confirmation or time frame? That's pretty much one of those questions again, which is pretty much how do you trade, right? I can't tell you that in one question. That's pretty much what I do each day in the streams. When I do my outlooks, when I do the trade reviews, when I do the chart updates in the chart sections. And you can only learn that by being here for, multiple weeks and just watching the streams, reverse engineering what I say, understanding what I'm saying, and then you will get the way I do it. Today's trade on pound, how would you have managed to trade if it was going to be a loss? I would have taken a loss and life would have kept going. How to improve that if you missed your setup, it also happened to me, and asked myself how the fuck I didn't see it. I was in front of the screen and didn't do anything. Um, I mean, again, that's a really individual question. The best thing you can always do is, if you miss the setup, right? Ask yourself, at what time should I have pulled the trigger? At what time was my entry? And then go back to that time point and see, what are you seeing now in hindsight, which you have not seen in the live market. Like, what was for example, your change in order flow trigger or your entry confirmation or your setup, whatever, which you are now able to see in hindsight, but once it appeared in the live markets, you were not able to see it the way you see it in hindsight. And reverse engineering that process usually gives you the information of what was the missing piece. When you started trading, what were your beginnings like? In terms of what? In terms of, I don't know. What do you mean? Was as your only mentor? Just curious. Like, I was watching probably almost every ICT video which was out there, right? I watched all the private mentorships, everything, but that didn't get me where I am now. Like, the best mentoring I got was always the one I did on myself. Like, but just watching the charts each day, going back into replay, What I was doing day in, day out, I just went into replay on the higher time frames, went all the way back, and just studied how candles form. I looked up in the economic calendar what news did we have in that week, how did the weekly candle form, and obviously I learned the PD arrays, the daily bias, all of those things from ICT's videos. But how to put all of that together into a system which I can trade, which then ended up being the four-step protocol. That's all of that work, how to put together all of those concepts. Because ICT has like hundreds of concepts, right? But I don't use all of them. And picking the concepts and how to put them together, that's what I did then, by simply spending time in the charts, live testing, you know, trial and error, testing stuff out. If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, kick it out. Collecting data on my system, and then just refining over time. And that's um, I would say that the most important aspect which got me to where I am now. Obviously, I also was studying um, other traders' charts back then. For example, in the beginning, what also which Sadar FX also was a guy which I connected with quite early, and I was really, I still have in my desk, I got a folder of all of his trades he ever posted on his X account. I printed them all out physically, put them into a folder, and made notes on them and reverse engineered his trades. And that also was some part. I took a lot of stuff and put it together, with my insights, and ended up then creating my own way of reading the charts. Who are you talking about? Rich Sadar FX on Twitter, I think. He's trading more like supply demand, combined with like a bit of ICT. I mean, supply demand is also ICT, to some extent. Um, so I also, used his charts to inspire my learning back then. Um, and then obviously also connecting with other traders in the space. What data do you collect around your model? The ones you can find on my Notion journal. At least those are the ones which are quantifiable. But there are also obviously a lot of quality-based data which you can put into a journal, right? Which are more likely. Also, one big thing what most people miss is you also have to analyze yourself as a trader, right? If you only focus on your system, but you as a trader just suck because you can't execute, you can't manage your risk, you can't stay disciplined, you can have the best system in the world, but if you just are a gambler, which can manage his risk, then the system you as a trader will be the bottleneck of your trading. When you go back to Notion journaling from TradeTeller, I didn't go back. I used both. Actually, always used both. Initially, I was only using Notion, and then later on, I started using TradeTeller as well. And then for like the last year or so, I only use TradeTeller and not Notion anymore. But yeah, recently I felt like again I want to journal again. Maybe in a month or so, I say I don't enjoy it anymore and it's annoying. Then I will stop it again. But for now, I find joy in journaling via Notion again as well on the side. And that's what I do right now. And it's also, if I look back at my Notion journals, for every one of you who knows me a bit longer, back from 22, 23. My Notion journals or my Notion trading models, yeah, were quite how to say, quite well known in the trading space. Um, and when I look back at those journals and watching 2, 3 years back, my trades back then with the screenshots with everything I channeled, it's always nice to look back on where you have been a few years ago. And now, if I journal now and look back again in 1 or 2 years, I might say again, oh, look at how I traded back then, how my system has maybe changed over time. And it's just something, to look back, like, a photo album of yourself, If you look back at you the way you looked 5 years ago to now, you probably look way different. And the same applies to your trading. And looking back at where you've been and how far you've come, it's always something which is quite interesting. I had 2 good entries today on the pound, same as yours. Normally I do TP or SL, but considering DXY was slowing bullishness, I closed them. My model was 100% there, but as I said, I closed them and both hit TP. I have seen you closing also trades when price didn't. I guess you want to say, what do you think about that? That's what I always say, right? You guys have to know when do you want to close a trade early and when not. Like, what are your rules, or what do you want to see in price or not want to see in price to close your trade early? That's why you need to have those rules. That's why I always say, if you are a beginner and you have no idea when you should close a trade early, then don't manage your trades and collect data first, and then decide based on that data when to close trades early and when not to, right? For example, I told you guys, funnily, in one of the last recent streams, when I was talking about my break-even trades earlier this week. I had a break-even here, partial win here, break-even, break-even. And I told you guys, yes, it's annoying. I took 2 break-evens here as well, here only a partial win. But I told you, I'm not worried because I know the next trades might not be a break-even. And then the next day I took a win here, 2.4R. Now, if pound hits my TP as well, 2R, and potentially even more. So then I'm up already 5R for the week. And 5R for the week, that's more than I need, more than I want. So you see, I don't care about taking a break-even trade. Yes, in the moment it's annoying and I am pissed as fuck on that day. But if I know it was a valid break-even trade, because I know this rule in the long run will prevent me from taking losses, then yeah, it's annoying in the moment, but I know long term it will make me more money. I don't like journaling in Notion a lot. First of all, you should not base your decisions based on what you like and what you don't like, but on what gets you further in this game and what doesn't. I also journal with a paper notebook, but I don't journal my trades with a paper notebook. I journal my emotions, my thoughts in a paper notebook. But all the things which are quantifiable, like the trading data, I journal in a Notion because it's much more easier in 3 months' time to look back at those data and to analyze them in Notion or another table chart than on a paper, because you don't have those tools in paper which you have on Notion or any other table chart, Google Docs, Excel, whatever. Knew you back then in the DQM and Liquidity House times. Liquidity House, I'm not sure what that is. I lately joined the Discord here, kind of regret the time I missed, because in the short time here I learned so much stuff, it's insane. Yeah, appreciate you for saying that, because I really, try to put the best work here in this Discord, because I really want to make the best traders in this space. And that's my goal. Helping or putting as much value out as possible. Going live each day, talking about everything I have in mind and try to put those things into words as good as possible so that you guys can get my brain, so to say. Um, and yeah, I mean, you know, I say it all the time. You just have to show up each stream consistently. Don't just listen to the stream like a Netflix show. Watch the stream. After the stream, reverse engineer in your own shots what I said. Really make it resonate with you. Think about what I said. All the small details I mentioned. Note them down. Every time I say something in the stream which is new to you or which makes a light bulb go up in your brain, note it down. Right? Take out your phone, take out your notebook, note it down, and then later on go over it again, review it in your own trades, try to incorporate it. And that's just the best advice I can give you. And I always try to make the Discord in a way how I would if I see myself back then like 3 or 4 years ago, and I had to or wanted to join Discord and learn trading. I always try to make it the Discord exactly the way I would want to be in a Discord to learn. Daily streams, teaching in the live markets, step by step. Not teaching any models which look flashy and look easy, too easy to be true, but just teaching the logic of price, because all those models which you see every day on X being released, new model, this model, blah 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 model, those models, you have to understand, most of those models are only meant for the purpose of marketing certain stuff. I obviously also market this Discord, but I don't market in a way where I say, I have this new model, I have this new theory, I have this secret, blah blah blah. That's bullshit, because I can promote stuff if I know I can 100% stand behind that. But if I make a model and give it a fancy name and just rebrand some stuff and make it look too simple to be true, I could not promote that with with my with my values I have. Discord from Ezekiel. I've never been in his Discord. Like, the only Discords I've been in was a private Discord of some other traders on X, which was, as mentioned, a private Discord. That's the one which I have been active and still am active to this day, with like friends. Then I had back then my own Discord for some time, which I shut down because I was not really active in the community as well. And besides that, I only have been in friends Discord. Yeah, I were in many Discords, like as a member, but not active. Like, I had like a role, for example, a friend role, whatever. But I was not really active in those. Only sometimes, here and there, occasionally, but like on a daily basis. One thing I've liked since joining your group a few months ago is that you don't just send signals, you let us know where you want the market to go, and it's down to us to find our entries, and that's definitely improved my trading. The main thing is why I don't share. There are multiple reasons where I don't share like signals in that way. Obviously, for example, today when I usually always share my trade when I'm in, or where I want to get it, what are my entry triggers. I share pretty much everything, but I don't want to share exactly like entry as LTP because of many reasons. I don't want to have people that only come into this group because they want to profit off of my signals, so to say. And then also, if I would always share my entries, everything, my trades, you guys would not learn, because you would always be dependent on, is David in the trade pattern? What is his invalidation? What is his entry? And you also won't learn yourself. You won't get that confidence in, I give you the bias, I give you the triggers, I give you the key levels, I give you, almost everything. The only thing you have to do is to find, okay, where do I enter? Where do I put my stop? Where do I put my profit? How do you manage to trade? Right? And I mean, the group, the server slogan says creating independent traders. But how do you want to create independent traders if you always depend on my signal when I go into a trade or not? And also, sometimes when I felt like back in the past, I did also share some signals that, okay, I go in here SLTP. But then, what I always did not like about that, people then always ask me, when do you go break even? Where's your TP? Should we go close early? And then all of those questions, like they kind of, first of all, annoy me because if I'm trading and I always get pinged in Discord for some questions regarding my trade, then it's just pissing me off, because I also want to trade in peace. And if those stuff then interrupts my own flow, then it's something which makes my performance worse and also makes me less enjoy the Discord myself less. If that makes sense. And yeah, exactly. Then for example, you don't post a trade, then people come, yeah, but why didn't you post a trade this time? And then, once you are in a trade, I mean, I've also seen other Discords, once you're on a losing streak or you take like 2 in a row, then people will get pissed at you. They will blame you. And then those people I don't want to have in my Discord, because I'm not responsible for your trading. If you come to my Discord to learn from me or to even take tips from me, then don't blame me for following me. Were you once in a huge drawdown? Yeah, of course. The most important skill in drawdown is learning to trade the same way as if you were at break even. So if you, for example, all of you probably notice once you're on drawdown, you have that uncomfortable feeling of wanting to get back to break even as soon as possible. And this feeling of I want to get back to break even as soon as possible makes you either hesitate on good setups or it makes you take bad trades because you want to get back to break even as soon as possible. Then once you take those bad trades, maybe you also over leverage because you want to get back to break even. Then you take another loss and you dig yourself your own hole. And once you realize that and you truly learn to master, okay, I know now I'm in drawdown, I have taken 2 in a row, 4 in a row, whatever it might be, but I know I have to execute the same way as if I am on a 5 winning streak or a break-even streak, whatever it might be, and not let the past trades impact my future trades or my future decision making. And that's the key what you have to master. That's also what I told you earlier. Don't only focus on your system. Your system is great and you have to focus on that, but you also have to take care of you as a trader. How do you trade? What is what are your emotions during a trade? How do you handle if the trade is in drawdown or consolidating at break even? For example, the pound trade today, right? It has been consolidating at my entry pretty much since New York session all the way through London close. So I asked myself, okay, is there any reason to close my trade here yet? No, it wasn't. We have not closed below this proportional on the H1 here. We have not closed somewhere below the middle of this wick. We have not closed below the swing low here. Yes, price is chopping up my entry, but the trade is still valid, so why should I close the trade? If price just dies here and stops me out, then it's just a loss. A loss is a loss, I don't care. But I do know it's my trade, and there's no reason to go break even or to close early. And knowing that gives me the confidence to hold through this consolidation. And then also, if I do take a loss, I'm fine with taking a loss. You will take losses in trading. Learn to be comfortable with losing. If you feel if you feel bad after losing a trade, you have a lot of work to do on your mental side. Or if you can't enter a trade and then just let it play out without like micromanaging a trade or watching a trade the entire time while you're in, if you can't do that, then you have a lot of work to do on your mental side. I can only teach you my system and my own experiences, but I can't help you to change your own mind. That's the work you have to put in yourself. Like the one who blamed you for the SPA lately. Like yeah, exactly. If price is just in consolidation overall, I can call the market makers and tell them move price now. And it's always the same thing. If markets are moving slower for some time, and then not as many trades or and not as active because there's nothing to really look out for, then people feel like they don't get what they pay for. You know, that's not how the markets work. I told you always there are seasonalities in trading, like in all businesses. There are months which are great, there are weeks which are great, but there are months which just suck or weeks which just suck. But the key is to not get those things to your head or blow up all of your accounts. This week alone, I've taken almost more trades than in the last 2 months. That's where I always say there are months where I take maybe 5 trades, but there are also sometimes a week where I take 5 trades. So if you always go into the week or into a month with the expectations of taking the same amount of trades like the previous week or previous month, that's not how it works. About your prop model, you said about risking 2% on a max drawdown of 8%. Do you reduce the risk after a loss or two, or you keep going? Meaning you just have 4 trades to lose the account? This prop model is about prop challenges passing the phase 1 of and phase 2, not about funded accounts. I obviously would not risk 2% of funded account. I'm talking about the way I approach phase 1 and phase 2. I won't trade a phase 1, and if I'm in drawdown, will cut my risk to 0.5%. I rather blow the account as soon as possible or pass the account as soon as possible, then buy a new one, then trade the old account out of drawdown. Because by the time I trade a phase 1 out of drawdown, I could have passed an entire new challenge. So the opportunity costs of passing the account, the old one, or getting it back to break even, are simply way too high. But you can watch my YouTube video on that regarding passing prop firm challenges. That's also one reason why you should always buy a prop firm account size challenge, which you can afford to lose. Like if you have to save up multiple weeks or months to buy a prop firm challenge, then you clearly can't afford that challenge. For some people, this might be 200k account. For someone else, this might be a 5k account, depending on, what is your income monthly, what is your net worth, what is your risk appetite, how much money can you put each month aside for challenges, what is your, trade frequency, what is your win rate. All of those things matter when you determine what account size you should go for. Bring your risk to 0.5 in drawdown and then back to 1% when you're on profit is good for for channeling long ago. I kept the challenge almost 3 months doing this, but not worth the time. I mean, that's what I also do on funded accounts, right? Because using a funded account, the opportunity costs are obviously much higher because I have to pass a phase 1 and phase 2 to get back to the funded account. But if I am in a phase 1, the only thing I can lose is my challenge fee. On YouTube, you said you will risk 2% per trade on the first race. On the Force P, it says 0.5%. Yeah, on the Forested protocol, I intentionally made a more conservative approach, since obviously most people who buy the protocol or who learn the protocol, they are beginners, right? And they should learn to find consistency in their own trading. I'm talking about mainly people who already have a system. They already passed a few funded accounts. They know what they're doing, and they know they have an edge in the market, right? But if you don't have that edge, you will obviously blow account after account if you go 2% and you don't have an edge. So you should only be doing that once you already have a proven system. So that's about scaling accounts, and the other one is about learning to trade. That's a big difference. Obviously, if you don't have an edge, it doesn't make sense to buy a 200k challenge, blow it each week, and buy a new one, you know? I feel there's so much I need to incorporate in my lifestyle as a trader. Yeah, you know, but you always gotta enjoy the journey, you know? If you always have that mindset, once I'm finally profitable or have my first funded account, my first payout, you should stop putting that on a pedestal, you know? If you always, say, I will be happy, I'll be satisfied once I'm finally funded, finally have a payout, finally have 10k in payouts, whatever it might be, you do yourself not a favor, you know? Because you always push that goal further away from achieving it. You always should rewire your mind to a way that your only goal should be to create a daily process, a routine, which you can follow each day and helps you to get better day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. And then the rest is just, being patient. For example, the question a bit ago regarding my routine, what I do, that's the routine I use to improve every week. Obviously, my improvements now are way smaller than they used to be like 2 years ago, but I still improve. That's the beautiful thing about trading. You will always improve. Obviously, only under the premise if you are reflecting your own traits, your own behavior. If you go into the market each day doing the same stuff you've done the day before, without learning from your mistakes, learning from your losses, from your winners, you obviously won't get anywhere. There's no change without change. Like also one mindset model you should always get used to is think about what would be your ideal self. Like if you had to envision your perfect self, like the best version you could be in a few years, like where you want to be, and then reverse engineer the process of how to become that person. Like what do you have to do each day to get one step closer to that person? And if you always ask yourself for each action what that person would do, then you will also most of the times find the correct answer. For example, if you hesitate or you have a trade, it's not part of your system, but you feel your balls tingle and you want to enter that trade because you want to feel that excitement of being in a trade, seeing those blue numbers going up on your MT5, then ask yourself, would my perfect self do that as well? Would my ideal self, like the version I aspire to be, would he do that as well? Or would he say, no, I have to hesitate, um, yeah, it's feel my impulses, be aware of those, but not act on those. Being more self-aware was my biggest needle mover. Exactly. Being self-aware, being honest with yourself, that's literally the most important edge you can have. Because most people, they can't be that. They're not self-aware. They're not honest with themselves.